Pronunciation Pro.
Pronunciation Pro.
Hello and welcome to the Pronunciation Pro podcast today. I am Annie Rudin and I am the host of this podcast and the lead trainer and founder at pronunciationpro.com. I am there with a small group of trainers and we are all speech pathologists or English teachers. So we do have an English teacher on staff just to help fill in some gaps with vocabulary and grammar. But the majority of our training is all about your spoken English and the pronunciation and accent and fluency of the way that you speak. So that is the main focus. So really I'm working with intermediate to advanced level English speakers who are working to refine their spoken English. For a lot of times, most of my students are professionals. They are working professionals here in the US or Canada, or for an English speaking company in their native country. And so English becomes very important, especially professional English. And that is what we are working on at this podcast, in the Pronunciation Pro online training program, and want to make sure that you have those tools and those skills to be able to navigate your career and advance in your career. Now, today we're going to continue with a series that we have been calling Speak Like a Pro. And we are going through industry-specific vocabulary and things to look out for in specific industries. So today we're going to talk specifically to our pharmacists. I've been working at Pronunciation Pro, working with students at Pronunciation Pro for the last 15 years, and we have had a lot of pharmacists come through the program. And understandably so, because it's a very important industry to get your pronunciation accurate. So today we're going to you're not feeling confident speaking about, then stick around and we will help you build some vocabulary and specifically how to pronounce that vocabulary and some words of caution when working with people when it comes to medical terms and pharmaceuticals. All right, so because we have had a lot of pharmacists, I've heard from our students about some really difficult situations where their job really was on the line if they didn't improve their pronunciation. That they were either in school to get their degree or their licenses to be able to become a pharmacist, and maybe a professor or someone is giving them feedback saying, hey, we need you to pronounce these correctly. We need you to work on that pronunciation because it's so critical to being successful in this industry. Or they're now working at a facility, and because they're not being easily understood, they've come and found my program so that they can work on this skill so that they can keep their job and keep advancing in their job. So this may describe you, but there are so many terms, very complicated terms, and we'll go through some of them today. But, terms like milligrams and micrograms, very, very similar in their pronunciation. So we need to make sure that we're clear and that we're giving the correct sounds and stress patterns to these words so that they're clearly understood by your patients and customers. So we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but why does this matter? Well, clear communication is literally a life or death matter in pharmacy. We really want to take this seriously because you're dealing with people and their medication and things they're putting into their bodies. And we need to make sure that it's clear, the instructions that we give them, and that they know what we're talking about. So pharmacists also must sound credible, precise, and compassionate. And it's interesting because so credible, like that they trust you, that you are the expert. precise because they need to make sure that they're hearing things correctly, and compassionate because you're dealing with people who are maybe in pain or struggling in some way. They wouldn't be coming to you if they weren't having a tough time with their health. And so there's a level of compassion that we want to show towards them. And a lot of that is shown through our tone. So we want to make sure that we are speaking in a more compassionate tone, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So your patients will often rely more on tone and clarity than the written label on the bottle. So they're getting a lot of their information from you and not really reading what's on the bottle. So it becomes really important that that communication is clear. So let's talk about, let's break down some tricky words that you may come across in pharmaceuticals, and I'll break them down. We'll talk about clarity, we'll talk about word stress, and so that we're very clear on how to pronounce them. Okay, so first let's talk about ibuprofen. So this is a common over-the-counter pill that reduces inflammation and pain, but ibu, so long ibu, and it has the invisible Y there because you have the U and then a consonant. So ibuprofen. Ibuprofen. So first and third syllable stress. Ibuprofen. Ibuprofen. It was interesting because I actually had to look this up because I have usually pronounced it as ibuprofen, ibuprofen. And I knew it was, I've known it's not correct, but I haven't ever stopped to kind of figure out what the correct pronunciation is. And so I did. And so today, this is a new one for me. It's funny because I did know that it was incorrect, but I just was too lazy to figure out what the correct pronunciation was. And everybody kind of understood what I was talking about. So ibuprofen, ibuprofen. Okay, how about this second one? Acetaminophen, acetaminophen, acetaminophen. So second syllable stress, a C, so that first vowel gets reduced because it's not the stress syllable. Aceta, that T becomes a D pronunciation. Acetaminophen, acetaminophen, acetaminophen. So this is actually a word that I have avoided, and so you probably know that feeling of avoiding a word that you're not sure how to pronounce. So I have very much avoided this word in the past, and so it was good for me to actually practice it because I was unsure about the pronunciation. I'd try it, but I wasn't confident in it. And so really looking up the correct pronunciation, if you just Google how to pronounce and then the word, you'll find it. So really making sure that you get that practice and that repetition so it feels natural for you to say the next time you need to say it. Acetaminophen. Okay, how about this one? Amoxicillin. Amoxicillin. Again, second and fourth syllable stress. Amoxicillin. Amoxicillin. Okay, how about dosage? Dosage. First syllable stress, do. So when we have the stress syllable, that vowel tends to get its full pronunciation. So dosage. Dosage. That long O. Prescription. 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 So second syllable and fourth syllable. Prescription. Prescription. Actually, just second syllable stress on that one. So this next one is an interesting one, the way it's pronounced versus the way it's spelled. Contraindication. 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 contra, contra. So first syllable stress, contraindication, contraindication. So if you have to move your arm back and forth to kind of help you get that stress. So punch when it's the word stress. So first syllable stress, so we're going to punch first, contraindication. And then this next one, pharmacology, pharmacology. So it starts with the stress syllable, pharmacology, pharmacology. I was in a class and they were talking about this woman was in, I'm trying to think, I remember what type of martial arts, but something where there's punching. And so she would use the punching. Pharmacology. So every time it was stressed, she would throw a punch. Pharmacology. So throwing a punch when it's the stress syllable and pulling it back when it's unstressed. Pharmacology. Okay, how about over the counter? Over the counter. So over the, get that TH in there, counter, counter. So that T doesn't get a very full pronunciation. You can say counter. You can get that T in there. Over the counter. Some native speakers will reduce that T because words that have like the N and the T, sometimes that T gets reduced. Counter or counter. How about milligram? Milligram, milligram. So first and third syllable stress. Milligram. So you see that second I gets a milligram. How about microgram? Microgram, microgram. And that O is an important one. Micro, micro, micro. Longer vowel there. Microgram. Okay, let's do 4 more. Interactions, 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 interactions. So first syllable stress, interactions. How about allergic reactions? Allergic reactions. Second syllable stress, allergic reactions. And refill, first syllable stress, and generic, generic. So j for that G, that the G sound instead of g, we're doing generic. Okay, so here are some of the common challenges that I hear with our pharmacists. So let's talk about 4 of them. A lot of these words that pharmacists have to use are very long, complicated words with many syllables. Okay, multisyllabic medical terms are very difficult. So we want to look at word stress. So the 2 things we really want to look at is the word stress. Which syllables are being stressed in this word? Because that matters. And then the vowel sounds in it. Typically, if the stress is on that vowel, then the vowel gets the full pronunciation. So word stress and vowel sounds are going to be really important for these multisyllabic words. Whether you're in the pharmaceutical industry or not, that is how we break down multisyllabic words, words that are longer than 3 syllables. We have to look at word stress, and we have to look at the vowel sounds. Second common challenge is just confusing similar sounding terms like milliliter and millimeter. Okay, milliliter, millimeter. So we have to make sure that those sounds are very distinct in their pronunciation. The third is voice projection and the tone when speaking through masks or glass. Okay, a lot of times you're wearing masks or speaking through a glass. So we have to project our voice. So those 3 easy tips, slow down, move your mouth, speak louder, become really, really important. So that's a very important piece for our pharmacists. And using professional tone with warmth and empathy. So how do we do that? Bringing our tone. So I can say, here's your medication. So here's your medication. When there's that sharp, like, here's your medication. Here's your medication. So it's kind of like that. You're hitting, the tone is that you're hitting those stress patterns versus here's your medication. Here's your medication. Here's your medication. How can I help you? How can I help you? Okay, there's a softness to the tone when we want to express kind of empathy or warmth. How can I help you? Okay, so that's more abrupt. How can I help you? So loud, short, like just bam, 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 bam kind of rhythm is forceful. It doesn't have that warmth and that compassion to it. But it's, how can I help you? How can I help you? So think of it as going up and over hills. So it's just smooth and nice, and we're going to have a good time, and we're going to be kind about it. So this is more of a kind tone. We really want to be more, like softer with it. We want to be flowy with our speech. That is going to bring a lot more of that warmth, and it's kind of sing-songy and empathetic. Okay, that's that tone of empathy is, oh, I'm so sorry that you're having a hard time. How can I help? Do you need anything else? Can I answer any more questions for you? There's a softness to it that we really want to practice in these situations. The trick I've seen a lot is with some of the Asian languages, the rhythm tends to be a little bit more staccato or abrupt or choppy than American English, that flows from word to word a little bit more or a lot more. And that staccato or that da, 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 or the, or kind of breaking in between, that creates a little bit more of an abrupt sound for American speakers. So that softness in the tone is something to really work on when it comes to profession as a pharmacist or any kind of healthcare worker. Next, let's talk about our confidence. Now, it's very common to have a fear of being judged when speaking these complicated technical terms. We have to remember to stay in our circle of influence, our circle of control, which is ourselves. Okay, you can work on improving the pronunciation of those words. You can ask for help. You can open yourself and say, hey, if I'm mispronouncing any of these, will you help me correct that? That can be really helpful when you're working with patients. People are willing to help quite often. And when you kind of soften up to that and say, did that make sense? Was my pronunciation clear enough for you to understand that? It softens the communication. It softens it and leads to more connection and less of that disconnection. Because if you're saying something and they don't understand, there is disconnection in that communication. But if you are asking for clarification, making sure that asking to make sure that you're clear for them, asking if you're pronouncing things correctly, it softens the interaction. And so you can be less afraid of whether they are judging you, and more about how can we repair this if it's broken in any way. There's a way to do that without looking unsure, because you can be very confident in your ability as a pharmacist and your expertise in that, but also be conscious and aware that maybe you might not be pronouncing it correctly. And so being able to say, hey, like, I really want to make sure that I'm clear for you because this is important information. I know that this medication can be really strong and powerful, and I want to be clear enough that you understand the directions. And so there can be some qualifiers or making sure that you're being understood. Another mindset shift I want you to have is that you are the expert. As a pharmacist or a pharmacist tech, you know more about that medication than the customer is going to. You've learned, you've studied, you've done the training, right? So you are the expert. Your accent does not take away from your knowledge. Your English level does not take away from your knowledge. And I want that to be a clear distinction, because yes, we're working on our pronunciation. Yes, we're working on those communication skills in English, but the content you understand and you are the expert. So it's okay for you to still be the expert and be working on your pronunciation or your accent. So let's talk about some ways to practice. So I want you to choose a small number of words or medication names that you use often, and set a goal of, like, I'm going to learn 3 a day or 2 a day, or I'm going to set aside this 5 minutes to kind of go through a couple of terms. So as you do that and you review it, so you choose 3 and you're working on that day, let's say Monday, you're working on these 3 terms or 3 medications. On Tuesday, review those 3, make sure you have them correct, and then review the next ones. And then the next day, review the previous ones real quick, and then review new ones. And if you feel like, okay, that word I've got in my brain now, I don't make any mistakes with it, then you can kind of cross it off and consider it part of your vocabulary now. But as you do this, think about the compound effect of that habit. So just doing those small steps done consistently over time will lead to incredible results in your ability to pronounce all these medications and all these things. You just have to have a strategy that actually works, and that consistency and follow through. So even just doing that small practice every day and getting into that habit will make an enormous difference in your confidence and your ability to communicate clearly these terms that it can be very difficult to pronounce. Another practice I'm going to give you is this role playing or this conversation with a patient. So I have a free download that you can use. I'm going to go through the interaction right now, so you have an example of it, and then you can download the worksheet and practice it yourself. So this is between a pharmacist and a patient, okay? And I'll just do both of the roles. Hi, Mr. Lee. I have a prescription for amoxicillin ready. This is an antibiotic used to treat infections. Okay, how should I take it? You'll take 1 capsule every 8 hours, with or without food. Make sure to finish the entire course, even if you start feeling better. Got it. Are there any side effects? You might experience mild stomach upset or diarrhea. That's normal. However, if you have any signs of an allergic reaction, like a rash or difficulty breathing, stop taking it and consult your doctor immediately. I also take a blood pressure medication. Is that okay? Yes, there are no known interactions between this antibiotic and your current prescription. But if you notice anything unusual, give us a call. Thank you. Do I need to refrigerate it? No refrigeration needed. Just get it in a cool, dry place. Okay, thanks again. You're welcome. Take care and let us know if you have any questions. All right, something that I want you to kind of do and get in the practice of is to use ChatGPT and be able to use that tool to generate some of these other, dialogues. So you could just say, I am a pharmacist and I want to role play some dialogue between me and a patient or me and coworkers. And it will generate some of these role playing opportunities. It's really easy. It's really effective in being able to get the vocabulary that you need. And you can even have ChatGPT read it for you. And then also, as you're reading it back, you can have them it record you and ask ChatGPT to then give you feedback on your pronunciation. It is not 100% yet, but it's better than nothing. So I want you to kind of do that. Or an alternative is to come to Pronunciation Pro, join Pronunciation Pro. You can come to any of our study groups that are 3 times a week, and we can give you feedback on some of these dialogues and do it with you. Okay, that's kind of a fun way to do it. Okay, so that is a good way to practice. I hope you will go and practice this dialogue and these vocabulary words, and hopefully you were able to do this along with me today so that you have those words and that vocabulary to be able to use effectively in your spoken English. As always, I welcome you to come join Pronunciation Pro, the online training program. We have a new app in the App Store. So if you go to Pronunciation Pro and look for Pronunciation Pro, you can find that app. As of today, it is not 100% ready, but hopefully by the time this podcast airs, then I think we'll be ready for it and ready for you. Otherwise, you can just go to pronunciationpro.com and join us there. All right. I hope you'll come. I hope you'll practice these things. I hope you'll use these tools and this resource to improve your spoken English and expand your vocabulary and your ability to pronounce these words. I know that it will bring a lot of success for you and confidence. All right. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Pronunciation Pro.
Pronunciation Pro.
Pronunciation Pro.